Hey, 7th graders! Today's assignment is a 2.1 and 2.2 populations and resources. Your learning targets for today are I can explain how ESMs, if you guys remember from earlier in the year, ESM stands for energy storage molecules. So I can explain how ESMs contribute to reproduction. So basically, we're going to be talking about what role having enough nutrients in our body helps with reproduction. And in the long run, that's going to help us kind of figure out what might be happening to a population if a population is either increasing or decreasing unexplainably. Okay? All right, so moving on, you guys have some notes to add into your OneNote today. So open up your OneNote, go to your section titled Populations and Resources, and in your vocab page, add energy storage molecule, consumer population, and resource population. Okay? Then you're also going to add to your key concepts page, key concepts 5, 6, and 7. So it should look a little something like this. Here's my vocab. Hopefully it all loads for me quickly. And it's there. An energy storage molecule is a molecule that organisms can use to release the energy they need to survive. Okay, so obviously if you're a prey and you're running from a predator, you need a lot of energy, and there's other reasons as well. Consumer population is a population that eats organisms from another population, and a resource population is a population that is eaten by organisms from another population. Okay, those are your three vocab. We're going to be coming to consumer and resource population either later in the week if you guys are doing this on a Monday, Tuesday, or you guys have already kind of encountered what a resource and a consumer population is from our food web activities that you might have done on Monday and Tuesday at home. Okay, so your guys' three key concepts. Key concept number 5, organisms need to release energy from energy storage molecules in order to reproduce. So reproducing takes a lot of energy, just kind of like running from a predator. And organisms in consumer populations get ESMs from eating other organisms in resource populations. So they get their energy from a resource population. Maybe if you're something like a deer, okay, you guys are still a consumer population because you need to get your energy from somewhere, so you guys would maybe eat grass. So grass would be your resource population. And on the other hand, the more ESMs available to a population, the more organisms in that population can reproduce. So, you know, if there's food is plentiful, water is plentiful, those kinds of things, reproduction is pretty easy for that population. Okay? All right, moving along to the warm-up. So what you guys see in this little picture here is a bunch of little baby tadpoles that are about ready to hatch. So what ideas do you have about what could cause the number of births to increase in a population? So if we're talking about these little tadpoles, what could increase? How many of these tadpoles are going to turn into adult frogs or be, you know, laid by adults, whatever the case is? How many tadpoles are being born or frogs are being born? So what ideas do you have about what could cause the number of births to increase in a population? So brainstorm and think of a couple things that could help increase the number of births of any population. All right, moving on, investigating energy. So remember, at any point you guys need to pause the video to complete a section. Please do so. All right, part 3, investigating energy. So what I'm going to show you guys don't actually have to do this sim link unless you want to, is we are going to open our sim up. We're going to look at the 3 population mode where we just have the little furbills, the wee bugs, and the little plants. I can't remember what the plants are called. You're going to look at an animal, so either the wee bug or the plant, and we're going to click on it and kind of follow it until we see its little tagline say that it is reproducing. Underneath each of these little guys, you will see a little bar. And the bar represents the amount of ESMs that little organism has, so how much stored up energy they have. Okay, so when you see one reproduce, what happens to that little bar of energy? So we're going to follow at least 2 more animals and observe what happens to their energy storage molecules when they reproduce. Note you can observe the animal's energy storage tank as well as the animal's pop-up indicator. So you guys will be able to see both of those. Okay. And then after watching a couple of these organisms do that, you guys will use your draw tool up here to circle, either increase, decrease, or stay the same when the question asks you what happens to an organism's energy storage when it reproduces. So you guys can kind of use, oops, is that even working? You probably need to use a pen for this one. There we go. So you can circle either increase, decrease, or stays the same. Okay? All right. So let's take a look at our simulation. I've already opened it here, so open link, and then here's my simulation. I'm going to go to the 3 population mode where I have the green leaf, the wee bug, and the furbill, and it's going to show us the ESM. So that's what's different than the introduction that you guys did previously. All right, I'm going to zoom in because you can't see anything from there. Okay, so you guys notice the little orange bars underneath each of these. This is really, it goes pretty fast, so it's really quite hard to see. So we're going to just slow it down a bit. And we're going to just choose an animal. So we can watch this little guy right here. He just found someone to reproduce with. So watch his little energy storage bar. This is going really slow. Apparently that takes a while. So now you can look at their little energy storage bar now that they have a little baby with them. Okay, what happened to it? All right, let's choose another animal. Let's pick this little wee bug here. See if this little wee bug is going to go reproduce for us before it dies. Oh, nope. I thought it was going to go, oh, nope. Sometime he's going to do something cool. Let's maybe speed it up just a smidgen. All right, let's see one go do its thing. Oh, it's chasing the ladies around. All right, you guys can also go in, instead of watching this whole video and trying to see what happens, you guys can also go in and do this on your own, and maybe you guys will find one that reproduces a little faster than mine does. Okay, oh, we can just go check on these guys right, where'd they go? I don't know, you guys go in and check it out. Here we go, watch these two right here. They're reproducing. What just happened to their energy storage molecules? Okay, you guys can see what's happening too. You can see how many ESMs they had. They had about 11. Here's another one reproducing, so you guys can see going down from 11 to, 4. That one needs to get some food in its belly. All right, so you guys can go ahead, use your draw tool to circle and answer what happens to an organism's energy storage molecules when it reproduces. So does it increase, decrease, or stay the same? All right, part 4 is a little lab, and obviously you guys are doing this from home, so unless you have yeast, which if you guys have yeast at home, you're more than welcome to try this. I have just this simple little setup here with 3 cups, A, B, and C. And then you guys are going to add the same amount of warm water, about 40 milliliters, or if you guys are looking maybe about an inch of water in the bottom of those cups is about the same, as long as you add the same to each cup. So add about an inch or 40 milliliters of water to each of the A, B, and C cup. And then you're going to add about a teaspoon of yeast into each cup. So if you guys, again, wanted to do this at home and you have yeast and sugar laying around, you're more than welcome to do so. I would add the yeast last, okay? What you also need to add is sugar, and sugar is going to be our independent variable because it's the thing that we're changing in this experiment. So in cup A, you will not put any sugar at all. In cup B, you'll put just a pinch of sugar. So if you just pinch into your sugar bowl and add that to the cup and stir it in. And then C, you're going to add a whole teaspoon of sugar to your cup. Okay, once you guys have those stirred in, you guys can go ahead and add a teaspoon of yeast, not a tablespoon, into each cup and stir it up and let it sit for about 10-15 minutes to see what happens. Okay, if you guys don't have the stuff to do this at home, you guys can right click and watch the setup of this lab, and so you guys can see kind of what it looks like, you know, before we let it sit for 10-15 minutes. Okay, moving along, your next activity is a little read about reproduction and energy. So here's your link to your articles. You guys can right click that. Oops, don't click my picture. Click the link, open the link, and you guys will pull up the library here. Okay, I'm going to read the introduction to you guys, and then from there you guys will choose either sockeye salmon, emperor penguins, fireflies, and elephant seals, and your goal will to be able to see how these different organisms use ESMs differently to reproduce. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. If you guys go right up here to these 3 horizontal lines with the dots, you guys have a quick, easy reference to get to where you need to be. So we're on our introduction right now. Reproduction is a lot of work. Some organisms travel thousands of miles to find a mate, the right place to lay eggs, or the right spot to give birth. They might work hard to attract mates using songs, movements, and other displays. Other organisms might fight fierce battles to win their mates and the chance to reproduce. Often, this is just the beginning of the job. Many organisms work hard to protect their eggs, find food for their young, and do everything else that may be required for successful reproduction. So here's a picture of some male elk fighting one another for a chance to reproduce with the female elk. And obviously, as you guys can imagine, fighting takes quite a bit of energy. Okay, also if you get injured in that fight, it's quite a bit of energy to heal yourself. No matter what an organism goes through to reproduce, the process requires a lot of energy. In fact, for many organisms, reproduction requires more energy than anything else in their lives. Some don't even survive. Reproduction requires so much energy that these organisms reproduce and then die. Whether reproduction is relatively easy or extremely difficult, every organism needs energy in order to reproduce. Without energy, there can be no reproduction. Organisms get their energy they need from energy storage molecules such as glucose, starch, and fat. So you guys kind of studied these ESMs earlier in the year. It was one of our first units, if you guys remember doing that with Miss Enfield. These molecules store energy that can be released in the bodies of organisms when they need it. Plants and other producers can make their own energy storage molecules through photosynthesis, but other organisms can't do that. To get energy storage molecules, they need to eat food. So what is food really? Food is the body parts of organisms that contain molecules such as energy storage molecules that other organisms need. So we have some vocab that's really important here. A consumer population is the term ecologists use to talk about a population that eats other organisms for food. So you guys can be both a consumer and a resource population. So for instance, a deer is a consumer because it has to eat other organisms in the form of grass. But it also gets preyed upon by things like wolves or bear, whatever the case, humans even. So they're also a resource population. Ecologists call a population that is eaten for food a resource population. Every consumer population gets its energy storage molecules from a resource population. So this kind of just shows like a little mini food chain here. It doesn't give any specific examples of animals, but it just shows that a resource population gives its energy to a consumer population. So notice the direction that the arrow goes. I think a lot of times mistakes kids made when they're doing a food web is that they do the arrow backwards and it has the consumer population pointing towards the resource population. But what you're indicating with these arrows is the direction that the energy flows. So a consumer population may eat a resource population, but the resource population is giving its energy to the consumer population. So the arrow shows us where the energy is going. Okay? Consumer populations eat resource populations to get the energy they need to reproduce. Finally, to learn about some specific populations and how they get the enormous number of energy storage molecules they need to release energy for reproduction, read one or more of the chapters that follow. So again, you guys can go up to this little key up here. Choose either sockeye salmon, dying to reproduce, literally. Emperor penguins, reproducing in the coldest place on Earth. Fireflies, reproducing brilliantly. Elephant seals, fighting to reproduce. So you guys can choose one of those. If you want to read more than one, you're more than welcome to, but you only need to answer questions on one. And remember that Amplify will read these to you guys if you click right here on the speaker and then hit play.
Chapter 3.
Okay. All right. Answer this question back in your thing. So first, use the draw tool to circle which article you read so I kind of know what you're answering on. And then answer this question. Where does your animal get the ESMs they need to do the activities required for reproduction? So they all kind of have some weird, intense activities that they need to overcome in order to reproduce successfully. So where do they get all that energy from? Okay. Finally, lab 6, this is your lab results. If you guys did this activity at home with yeast and sugar, go check out what's happening in your cups and answer these questions. And if you guys don't have this material at home, you guys can watch this short little video here. Just right click, open the link, and you guys can see what those cups of yeast look like after sitting for about 15 minutes. Okay? Which cup of yeast showed evidence of releasing the most energy? Explain your answer. And then which cup of yeast most likely reproduced the most? Explain your answer. So look at those cups. Tell me what's different about them, how they look before versus how they look compared to each other. And finally, let's talk about yeast a little bit. So yeast reproduce a little bit differently than, say, humans or most animals that you know. So yeast are asexual reproducers, meaning that they don't need a mate. Okay, they can just do it on their own. They don't need a mom and a dad. They're just like, I'm a mom or a dad or whatever. I can do it by myself. how they reproduce is they just start growing this little bud on them. And eventually that bud's going to get large enough. And once it's large enough and has everything it needs to survive, that little bud just breaks off and creates a new yeast molecule. Yeast are obviously something that we can't see with our naked eye. We have to look through a microscope to see them. So this is a really good microscope picture of what yeast look like and what their little buds look like. Okay, so since we can't see those, you guys can see kind of what their reproduction looks like. So not easy for them to just grow something off their body and then pinch it off. So they would obviously need some help there. So you guys can kind of use this information to relate to what you guys are answering back in your lab results. So which one explains the most release of energy? Think about how reproduction in yeast works. Finally, a little nugget of extra credit for you guys. If you so choose to do it, you do not have to. You guys can right click and open this link to the video. The video talks about 2 populations of crickets in a lab and how they changed the ESMs of crickets and what they observed. Okay, so watch that little video and then answer these 2 questions. What was different about the 2 groups of crickets shown in the video? And then which group of crickets reproduce more? Why did they reproduce more? Okay, so answer those 2 questions and then you guys can earn a little nug of extra credit. And then finally, do your wrap up. Do you have any questions? Circle yes or no. If yes, type them below. Obviously, if it's something that's preventing you from completing this assignment, send me a message right away so I can help you out. And finally, how do you feel you did on this assignment? 4, 3, 2, 1. You are done. Nice work. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon.